And we are back for another Monday Modern Madness. However, for this episode, we are going to talk about Venser and the deck that I built around Venser. I am so fascinated by Venser's first ability and the last ability. Well, the first one is the one that really captured my imagination because it's a blink ability. You can blink pretty much any permanent that you control. And since 2011 or 2012, I've been tweaking, trying all sorts of combinations of cards. Venser is not really a good deck to play to make this deck to work. I mean, if you have a choice, and if you are to choose which deck you are going to play, like you have all the cards that you need, and you are to choose which deck you wanted, you definitely will not choose Venser. Venser will not be your first choice. If you have a choice, if you have all the cards, you will most likely choose the tier 1 decks that has already proven themselves because they are tier 1 decks. However, of course, I have not given up on Venser. I still want to play Venser. And it's been about, 8 years or so? A few more cards has been printed. And here's what I have. This list, by the way, is the same list that I used in our previous episode. The one where we not just survive, but beat the Grixis Death Shadow deck. You can check it out. I'll probably link the description below so you can check it out, see how exactly we managed to do that. Probably with some luck, yes, but we managed to do that using Venser. Here's the old version. I'm planning on, after play testing it once with that deck against Death Shadow, I'm planning on tweaking this deck a little more. However, just before we go there, I just wanted to show you what the deck list looks like before we start changing it. So here's the old version, and we're going to move on to the new version in just a bit.
2,000 years later.
Alright, now this is the updated version of our Venser deck. I removed pretty much all the counter spells in the main deck. I've taken out Mana Leak. I noticed that we need to focus on one thing, which is to blink your permanents, blink your creatures. If you are going to have counter spells in this deck, you really have to commit in having counter spells in this deck. Otherwise, just remove it and focus on the theme of this deck, which is why I took it out. Now, you're going to be asking why I still have Cryptic Command. The good thing about Cryptic Command is it's so versatile. It has a lot of modes. So, I've decided to keep it for two reasons. One, I've taken out Wrath of God. I've put it in the sideboard, taken out Wrath of God, because Wrath of God kinda, it doesn't play with what we're trying to do here. We're trying to cast creatures. So what Cryptic Command does is delay our opponent without affecting our creatures, because one of its modes is to tap all creatures, or is it tap all tap all creatures your opponent controls is what it's the correct wording for that. So yeah, we can use that as somewhat pseudo halt or delay to what our opponent is trying to do, especially if they are creature based and trying to kill us as quickly as possible. And also, it has the bounce effect that could save any of our permanents depending on the situation. So yeah, I've kept Cryptic Command for those other modes aside from the counter, and it also draw me a card, so yeah, that's an additional effect. But Mostly for the other modes is why I kept Cryptic Command. I've also added Wall of Omens because, one, it draws me a card. I can blink that. It's one of the perfect card combination with Venser. But at the same time, if we're against aggro decks, I can use that as a blocker to delay everything until we reach to the part wherein we have Stonehorn and they can stop attacking us. I also added Glass Casket because we only have, 3 paths to exile? And if it is also an aggro deck, then we can use Glass Casket to delay them from killing us. And not just that, but in Modern, there are not a lot of creatures that they cast that is about 4 mana and above. Most of the creatures in Modern are efficient enough to be under 3 mana or 3 casting cost. And that's why Glass Casket is perfect. Also, in this current Modern meta, most of our opponents, or most people, including me, have decided to remove any artifact removal spell or permanents or enchantments or anything that affects artifacts, because there are not a lot of artifact decks nowadays for at least this current Modern meta. So Glass Casket is perfect for that matter. And you can blink that over and over again. So if we're against decks that use tokens, then we can continue to use Glass Casket, blink it over and over again, and just take out all those tokens. Of course, in our sideboard, we still have Detention Sphere, which kind of does or make our work a lot easier, but we have Glass Casket on our main board for those sort of things. And then we have Ephemerate because it has Rebound, so it kind of does it twice in an instant effect, and it's just 1 mana, so it's one of the most efficient blink spells you can have. And then we have Omen of the Sun for 2 things. 1, it creates tokens. It has Flash, so you can cast it whenever you need it. It also gains you 2 life, which is very important in a deck wherein it's a very slow deck. So if you can get an additional 2 life, especially if you're against a deck that beats you, like an aggro deck that beats you right away, then Omen of the Sun is really helpful at this point. And also in our sideboard, we have Lone Missionary to give us 4 life. I have also thought about including Birth of Melodies here because it also gains you 4 life, or no, 2 life at the end of its saga. However, its first ability is to find you planes. We only have 2 planes in this deck, so most likely we will always waste its first ability. However, the second ability and the third one makes sense. The second one makes you a 0/4 wall for blockers, and then the third one is that gains you 2 life. And especially since we have Sun Titan in this deck, which I just recently added, I was up to the point where I really wanted to add that card, Birth of Melodies. Then again, we only have 60 cards, so I really have to find the perfect spot for that, and I really can't. There's a lot of cards that I wanted to put in this deck. If ever that I would decide to do that and change something in here and add Birth of Melodies, then that would probably be Reality Acid. So for those who doesn't know what Reality Acid is, it has Vanishing. For those who doesn't know what Vanishing is, it's a time bomb, like a ticking clock, or Vanishing 3 means for the next 3 turns, if nothing happens to it, it will go to your graveyard, and then it triggers its effect, which is when Reality Acid leaves the battlefield, enchant permanent's controller, sacrifice that permanent. The thing is, and the reason why I've included Reality Acid is because, as I've said earlier, I've built a deck around Venser for some time now, and yes, I also used Reality Acid at some point together with Venser. And blinking Reality Acid with Venser, if everything works out, feels really good. You're pretty much exiling any permanent Reality Acid can enchant any permanent, like lands, including lands, yes. So yeah, I've decided to add Reality Acid. Originally that was 4. I've bring it down to 3. I've used it in a previous match. Bring it down to 2 because I can't use it properly. So maybe 2. Maybe in the right match, in the right deck, maybe I can take advantage of Reality Acid. But on our previous match, it's not really working a lot. So bring it down to 2. And then the latest addition to this deck is Sojourner from Modern Horizon, which pretty much is somewhat also our win condition, and at the same time one of our blink options, because it does it automatically at the beginning of your instant, and it becomes bigger. It gets a +1/+1 counter whenever it does that. So aside from our spells, we also have Sojourner to help us blink our creatures. So if it doesn't die and it becomes big enough to hit our opponent in the face, then yeah, we'll go with that as well. And then out of all the cards here, there are 2 cards that I really love using together with Venser. First one is Stonehorn Dignitary, because it kind of lets your opponent skip their, or force your opponent skip their attack phase, literally. So it's fun, especially against aggro decks. They pretty much can't do anything about you anymore because they can't attack. What they can do is cast their spells, burn you straight to the face, one option, or kill Stonehorn Dignitary. However, Stonehorn Dignitary has a 4 toughness, so they will have to spend 2 spells to do that. And even then, we may have enough time, enough time or enough spells to save Stonehorn Dignitary in that situation. So if you continue to blink Stonehorn Dignitary, it piles up, by the way. It piles up. So if you blink Stonehorn Dignitary over and over and over again, let's say in one turn you blink it 4 times, then your opponent will skip 4 attacks, 4 attack phase. So it's really nice to invest on stockpiling, blinking Stonehorn Dignitary as much as you can. Let's say you have to do it in 1 turn, then go ahead, do it, because it piles up. And also my second favorite card is Nevermaker. Now Nevermaker is kind of a little bit hard to use because its effect is not when it comes into play. Its effect is when it leaves the battlefield. That's when you take advantage of its ability, which is to return any non-land permanent back to the top of its owner's library. And then we have, what is this card? Archaeomancer. Well, you pretty much know already what Archaeomancer does. It returns target instant or sorcery spell or card from your graveyard back to your hand. Well, our target is definitely Ghostly Flicker because that's our blink card spell, or Ephemerate. Any of the 2. You can just... In this way, we can recycle ghostly flicker so we can use it over and over again, or same goes with ephemerate. So either one, you can use either one with Archaeomancer. So if you have already figured it out, you blink Archaeomancer, you get ghostly flicker, blink Archaeomancer again, and get ghostly flicker again. Not an infinite combo because we don't have that option in this deck, but at least we have something to recycle our ghostly flicker in case we need more of that. So that at least is one option for us, or at least another plan for our deck in case Venser doesn't work, since if you haven't noticed it yet, we only have one Venser in this deck. So yeah, gonna use ghostly flicker. By the way, ghostly flicker can target two things. So either two creatures or two lands or a combination of one creature, one artifact, one land. So yeah. And then this is a very obvious choice because Yorion blinks everything except your lands once it comes into play. So imagine Venser can only blink one target. So you have to choose which one you really need the most in any situation. But once Yorion comes into play, you can now target Yorion, and Yorion will target pretty much everything you wanted except your lands and your planeswalkers. So yeah, Yorion definitely has to be in this deck to maximize Yorion's ability. And then we have Teferi for two things. You already know how powerful Teferi is, so I don't think I need any explanation on why you have to have Teferi here. But really only because of its bounce effect. The static effect, there's nothing more we can do about that. If we manage to get Teferi to come into play, then that's really great because it helps us a lot. It helps us cast all our spells without being interrupted, so that's really great. Or the last ability. Let's just say the last ability. That's the one that I really needed in with Teferi. But again, the static is really nice because it's a way to prevent our opponent to interrupt us with what we're trying to do, especially if we're already set up. But even then, even if we don't have Teferi, it's still fine. This deck will still function, whether Teferi is there or not. It's just that Teferi is more like the security. And then yeah, we have Sun Titan. What also makes this deck more enticing to use is because of Mystic Sanctuary. Once Mystic Sanctuary is in play, and once it is active, and you must have 3 islands to do that, well, you can always blink. If there's nothing else for you to blink, then just blink Mystic Sanctuary using Venser over and over again. And what it does is, well, you can return Path to Exile on top of your library, for example, or Ephemerate, or Ghostly Flicker. So Archaeomancer is not the only option for you to bring Ghostly Flicker back to your hand. Although this is a little bit more, well, not as efficient as when you're doing it with Archaeomancer, still, flickering, blinking, Mystic Sanctuary, putting your Ghostly Flicker back on top of your library is still a good option. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't let you tap. It doesn't make you tap your mana for it. So it's a good option. And then we add Sun Titan in the picture to spice everything. Why? Well, the only thing that Sun Titan cannot touch in the graveyard is everything from this line up to Sun Titan. So Stonehorn, you can't touch it. Nevermaker, Archaeomancer, and Yorion. So you can't bring them back. Not any of them. However, from the Fairy Time Raveler up to Glass Caskets, Omens of the Seas, Wall of Omens, you can bring them back from the graveyard. So this is what makes it more interesting. If you use Omen of the Sea, cast it, scry, and then sacrifice it, and then scry again just so you can dig your library for what you need, and then you cast Sun Titan and get Omen of the Sea back from the graveyard to the battlefield, is really good. You don't have to think about when do I need to sacrifice Omen of the Sea, because you know that you can bring it back using Sun Titan and Glass Casket at the same time. In case something destroyed it, you can always get your Glass Casket back. So it's Wall of Omens. Let's say you casted it, you blocked it, you needed the blocker, you used Wall of Omens to block whatever creature that you're trying to avoid, then yeah, you can always get it back. That's how powerful Sun Titan's ability in this deck. And then we have the sideboards. Sideboards, I'm still thinking about adding more Dispel here. Only for the reason only because we wanted to make sure that when we cast Venser, it resolves. So we always need, or I'm thinking I probably need Dispel as a backup whenever I cast Venser, just to be sure it resolves. So I'm still thinking about that, but we'll see. And then we have an additional Stonehorn Dignitary, 2 more. Rest in peace, in case it's a graveyard thing that we need to be scared of. And that's what Ashok is also doing here. Ashok also has the static ability that prevents your opponent from searching. So that's really an added bonus, but we're kind of making sure that they don't have or no access to their graveyard. The good thing about Ashok here is if we are about to go to the mill option instead, yeah, sure, we can activate Ashok over and over and over and over again, and then blink it using Venser, and then you can start all over again and mill your opponent. And then we have the Tension Sphere. We already discussed that a little bit earlier. It helps Glass Casket. And then all of our creature removals or mass removal is in our sideboard. 2 Wrath of Gods and Settle the Wreckage. We also have Celestial Purge, just in case. And then Lone Missionary, which we also already talked about. And then Muldrifter, so we can draw more cards. I may or may not take it out, depending on how many times I'm going to put that in the deck during sideboard. But that's it. That's pretty much a deck. And I'm excited to use it. I'm excited to test it out. I'm not keeping my hopes up because chances are I will be disappointed. I don't think that this deck will actually survive a lot of decks. I don't even think that this deck will win a lot of games against a lot of decks. But of course, there's only one way to find out, and that is to test it out. For now though, well, as always, you know what to do. Hit like, get subscribe. If you don't, you can hit the dislike button. But if you have something to say why you dislike it, then also, please, by all means, let me know. If you are looking for something to watch, then you can always check our other videos. For now though, ciao.